This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Despite a rather negative fan sentiment in the weeks leading up to the release, Fantastic Four: First Steps outperformed Superman in Thursday previews, which led to projections for the overall weekend performance instantly shooting up, many thinking it was on track to match or even exceed Superman's $125 million opening. But after a big Thursday and Friday, the movie dropped precipitously on Saturday and Sunday, maybe because those most eager to see it had already seen it by then, and maybe because the word of mouth from Thursday and Friday was rather polarized, which we also see reflected among reviewers in this corner of YouTube. Whatever the cause, Fantastic Four viewership dropped on Saturday and Sunday, which meant it came in below the most recent projections for the weekend as a whole, ultimately opening at $118 million, $7 million behind Superman. But the real story here is the international performance, where the Fantastic Four actually did outperform Superman, as Fantastic Four opened to $100 million internationally, while Superman was only able to do $95 million, and that's in compatible markets. What does this say about James Gunn's much publicized excuse for Superman's international underperformance? We're about to find out. But on the topic of international, it's summer, it's vacation time, many are traveling, especially in Europe, but no matter where you are, Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video, will protect your data and secure constant access. Being a frequent flyer myself, I can relax knowing that Surfshark will mask my IP address, exact location, download history and other data, while their clean web feature blocks trackers, malware and phishing attempts, enabling safe surfing, especially since Surfshark themselves don't track or store what I do online, because unlike with some other popular VPN providers, Surfshark has no activity log. Surfshark not only allows access to regionally blocked websites, it also gives some great advantages when it comes to streaming. For instance, you can access 15 different Netflix libraries, all with a different selection of movies and TV series simply by changing your virtual location. And there are many to choose from, as Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in more than 100 countries around the world. I've tried a number of VPNs over the years, and Surfshark remains my favorite one, which is why I will work with no other, and since they sponsored this channel, we naturally have a deal for you. If you use our link surfshark.com/midnight or use code MIDNIGHT at checkout, you'll get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out at surfshark.com/midnight. With that, let's get back to the international response to different American superheroes. Deadline Hollywood writes, Marvel Disney's The Fantastic Four: First Steps has come in with an estimated $218 million global opening, which is pretty close to Superman's global opening of $220 million. The big difference between the two is that Superman opened bigger domestically, while Fantastic Four outgrossed it internationally, just not enough to make up for the domestic shortfall relative to the most recent projections. Deadline provides some more international comparisons though, writing, the overseas debut is 13% ahead of Thunderbolts, 11% ahead of Superman and 4% above Captain America: Brave New World in like-for-like markets at current rates. The Fantastic Four also scored the biggest superhero opening of 2025 in Mexico, the UK, France, Italy, Spain and the European and Latin American regions, as well as several smaller markets. Both movies utterly tanked in China, a market that Hollywood honestly should just forget exists in my book. No one else will give as little back to the studio of the box office gathered there, and no one else requires as much groveling for the money that comes from there. Still, Superman fared significantly worse than expected in international territories that aren't China as well, something James Gunn has acknowledged and provided a couple of reasons for. Yet the media latched on to only one of them. Gunn spoke out to Rolling Stone magazine, and hidden in a lengthy piece titled Superman's Secret Revealed, the James Gunn spoiler interview, he also addressed the international underperformance, listing multiple possible reasons for it, saying, Superman is not a known commodity in some places. He's not a big known superhero in some places like Batman is. That affects things. This, of course, is true. Superman may be the more iconic hero, but Batman is the more popular, and has a history of box office gold behind him, 1997's Batman and Robin being the lone exception. By contrast, Man of Steel underperformed relative to market expectations in 2013, as did Superman Returns in 2006, and 20 years before that, he outright flopped in his prior movie, Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, back in 1986. Food for thought, we are now about as far away in time from Superman Returns as Superman Returns was from The Quest of Peace. Let me know if that little information nugget brightened your day in the comments. Either way, we have to go nigh on 5 decades back in time to get to the era of Superman the movie and Superman 2, and outside of the US and UK, even those aren't nearly as revered by contemporary audiences or critics as one might think. Still, Gunn provided yet another reason for why his Superman is underperforming internationally, and this is the one the media latched onto. Gunn continued, and it also affects things that we have a certain amount of anti-American sentiment around the world right now. It isn't really helping us. Note that Gunn presented this as, and there is that too, on top of everything else, after giving a much bigger reason, yet this is the one reason the media chose to run with. For instance, the Deadline Hollywood article seeded from this Rolling Stone piece was titled, "James Gunn blames anti-American sentiment for Superman's lower international haul," which is a wild misrepresentation, and it's far from the only one. Variety, a publication that really has gone out of its way to label the movie as woke and partisan, and that explicitly has tried to manufacture some quote-unquote MAGA outrage over it, misrepresents the Rolling Stone piece every bit as much, with their headline, "James Gunn doesn't get how Superman is considered woke," and says anti-American sentiment around the world isn't helping us at global box office. And even smaller and more independent outlets like comicbookmovie.com ran with the headline, "James Gunn on Superman's international box office. There's anti-American sentiment around the world now." Based on these and oh so many other similar headlines, you'd think Gunn, in not so many words, was blaming Trump. Because the quiet part here is that this anti-American sentiment hails from the international mainstream media running wall-to-wall anti-Trump coverage, which I can personally attest that they are indeed doing. Still, Gunn never listed that as a primary reason for Superman's international underperformance, only as, "and that isn't helping us either." Which technically may be true, though I doubt anyone who fall prey to such sentiments were going to see these movies in any event. However, any anti-American sentiment created by that would affect all American blockbuster movies equally, and this is clearly not the case. Let's look at the movie that is still in release, Jurassic World Rebirth, a movie which has made more than 700 million worldwide, of which barely 300 million came from the domestic box office, while the remaining more than 400 million came from the international audience. No one seems to have minded Trump when dinosaurs are involved. Likewise, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning pulled in almost twice as much internationally as domestically. And the live-action remakes of both How to Save Your Dragon and Lilo & Stitch both pulled in significantly more internationally than domestically. So if there is an anti-American sentiment going around, it appears to be restricted to the international mainstream media, because there is certainly no hint of it at the box office. So it's pretty disingenuous of the media to present it as if that was Gunn's go-to excuse, which it clearly wasn't. Still, the international demand for comic book movies in particular has declined significantly though. There is ample data to support that, and I do believe there's a reason for it. James Gunn is quite right in that Superman isn't as popular internationally. Case in point, there hasn't been a Superman movie that was an unreserved worldwide hit in the lifetime of most of those who regularly watch movies. And outside of Batman, the DC brand itself has simply not been able to build a following internationally. And prior to the release of Batman v Superman, John Campea predicted the DC brand itself would become a problem unless Batman v Superman knocked it out of the park.
You will not recover from this. You screw up Batman versus Superman, done! Try rebooting something in 10 years because your goldmine franchise is dead.
By contrast, the Marvel brand has successfully been built internationally ever since that huge Marvel logo was attached to Spider-Man back in 2002. I think that is the chief reason why the Fantastic Four opened bigger than Superman internationally, because Fantastic Four has the Marvel brand working in its favor, and Superman doesn't. Which is ironic, because the shittiness of DC movies outside, it is the Marvel brand, or rather the MCU iteration of it, which has driven the audience away. Hollywood has gotten used to comic book movies taking a ton domestically and even more internationally, but this actually only started in earnest when the MCU took off. Because the first decade of the MCU won the hearts and minds of moviegoers all over the world, across borders, cultures, and languages. Without even trying, the MCU appealed to everyone, everywhere. It is therefore ironic that when the MCU usurped the MCU following Endgame, something we were told was all about ensuring that even more people would feel seen and represented in these movies, and therefore feel safe to fork over their cash and go see them in theaters, audiences all over the world, of different ethnicities, speaking different languages, and subscribing to different beliefs and cultures, all started tuning out. I submit that is what has happened. Comic book movies have been the biggest genre, if you will, for years now, all over the world. But no genre went more woke and more female-centric than it, and that's what we're seeing the effects of now. Only $5 million more of international audiences went to see Fantastic Four than Superman, which I submit is how much more the Marvel brand is appealing internationally than the Superman brand. But the fact of the matter is that both of these movies are underperforming big time internationally, as has every other major comic book movie since the fluke that was Deadpool and Wolverine. That's the true cost of comic book movies going woke and of the MCU. A loss of both domestic and especially international interest in this particular brand of cinema. The good news is that neither Superman nor the Fantastic Four are all that woke compared with comic book movies of the recent past. As such, both of these may contribute towards returned audience growth in the future. But Hollywood still has a long way to go and much penance to do for their woke DEI sins before international audiences will return to these movies in the numbers they did before. Or is that too late now? Will the audience ever return in the numbers Hollywood used to take for granted? Let me know in the comments, and before you go, remember to protect your online privacy, so use our link surfshark.com/midnight or use code MIDNIGHT at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free.